Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, the leaves are turning and we're putting on our scarves. It's time to talk about autumn games. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how you doing?
Doing great. I feel like we're recording this at a good time because it's cooled down a little bit in LA.
Cooled down a little bit,
really
man.
Feeling that like autumn lifestyle.
We're going to get below 60 degrees on this one,
Get
baby.
out your parkas.
Oh, I know. Look, hats, gloves, galoshes, anything you could, the thing that protects your face, like the bottom half of your head, like everything has to be covered. My buddy Paul, when we were going to school in Wisconsin, would wear two hoodies, one forward and one backward, so he could pull the hood up over the front part of his face and the other hood over the back.
Seems like you could just buy a coat.
I mean, he also wore that. This
Oh,
was
I
school in Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin in February. It is cold all the time.
Should be illegal.
That's right. When we're not talking, look, we're not talking about February.
That's right. We're not talking about winter games.
These are not winter games. These are not Mario and Sonic at the winter games. This is Mario and Sonic at the autumnal games.
And all that means.
And what it does mean, we'll get to in a second.
Yes.
First, we've got our normal business to attend to. Sonic Force is my copy of it. You want to play it? Of course you do. You can borrow it from us. All you got to do is email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com and let us know where we can send it. You play it. You send it back. Costs you nothing. Great.
While you're sending that email, send us your Super Mario Maker 2 levels.
And I cannot stress this enough. Make them two different emails. If an email is like, hey, Sonic Forces, and also another thing, I'm going to lose one part of it.
Right. So while you're doing that,
yes,
but in a separate email,
yeah,
or you can tweet it at us, send your Mario Maker 2 levels. We love playing them. We love talking about them on the show.
Yes.
We love including them in the show notes so other people can play along.
We love every part of it. You can tweet at us at NinCart Society, or again, email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. I'm sorry. I didn't
panic
lock
on Patrick's face. And look, am I embarrassed? Egg on my face for sure.
Yeah. I knew that it wasn't. I felt like it wasn't going to happen because I didn't lock eyes with you before I started it, which I usually do. I mean, normally we are locked eyes the entire podcast.
Right. But I got distracted for a second because I was thinking about 8-Bit Betty's new music.
Oh, yeah, because 8-Bit Betty put out a new single called Fall on Your Sword. It is available now on 8bitbetty.com. You can get it on his Twitter, which is 8-Bit Betty Music, or you can just go to YouTube and look for Fall on Your Sword, 8-Bit Betty. It's a great new tune.
Or you can send us an email at
Nintendo Cartridge Society
at gmail.com, and we'll send you a link.
I might not do that.
You would do it if somebody wrote in.
I would. It's true. But maybe only 2 or 3 times. Here's one last thing that you can do with that email address. I know we're putting a lot on you, listener. I'm sorry, but we need your help. We are trying to determine the best piece of Nintendo music of all time. And we are going to do this with a tournament that is made up of only pieces that you submit. So email them to us, tweet them at us, and let us know what songs we should consider in our best Nintendo music championship bracket.
So we're giving you a little bit of time to do this. Get them to us before November 22nd, please. But just because we're giving you a long lead time doesn't mean that you should procrastinate. That's only for school.
Yeah,
and
procrastination is only for school and work and shopping for your niece's birthday. That's it. Those are the only things that are acceptable to procrastinate on.
This is not one of those.
This is not. All right. And Mark, let's get into it. Let's get into the topic of the week and let's talk about some fall games. Okay, so what do we mean? We're saying fall games.
Yeah, I think couple of things. I've kind of broken mine out into 3 distinct categories that I think kind of paint a picture of what I'm thinking about here. Because for me, autumn has always been a time, I don't know, for whatever reason, of contemplation. Like
Okay.
that's what I think. Not that during autumn I become like super contemplative.
Uh-huh.
It's just that in my memories of, like autumn's past, with the sun beginning to go down earlier,
Memories of autumn's past.
and I mean, look, am I a poet?
Yeah,
Yeah, of course I am.
of course you are.
And the leaves are dying and falling off the tree, and it gets a little chillier and all that kind of stuff. I'm really painting a picture here.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
like, I don't know, there's something a little bit melancholy about that,
Yeah, well,
but
so
sweet at the same time.
it is like spring in that it is a season of change, but it is a change towards the more the dead, right? The change towards the more wintry. And so like yeah, there's totally a sort of like sadness to it, a melancholy. So how does this feed into your categories?
So I kind of have three categories of games. One is a little more like nostalgic driven category, like games that I think of as being a kid
Mhm.
around this time of year playing or experiencing a lot. The second one is games that are specifically around the changings of the seasons.
Okay.
And then the third one, of course, are spooky games.
Oh, spooky games. Yeah, so it is interesting. I feel like I don't, because I also thought like, okay, what games do I associate with playing in the fall? And I don't have a lot of them. Partially because fall is always a back to school time, and like college was probably my least video gamey time of my life. I was just busy doing other stuff, and while I played games in high school and junior high school and before, usually going back to school was like the cue to me to stop playing games for a little bit. So I don't have a ton of games that were actually like super active during that time. I have some notable exceptions, but I think you've got a few more games than me. So why don't you offer your first?
Yeah, sure. So the first one that I really associate with autumn is Donkey Kong Country, the original for the Super Nintendo, a game that we've talked about a lot on this show.
Yeah.
I have so many memories of it being like rainy outside, and the way that like wet dead leaves
Yes.
smell, when they've like gathered and it's beginning to like compost a little bit.
Yeah.
Like that's such a strong like sense memory for me, especially for this game. So like it being rainy outside, playing Donkey Kong Country with my siblings, and listening to like the Les Miserables soundtrack
Yeah.
on constant repeat.
That is such a funny like trio of sensations. Les Mis, Donkey Kong, and just like fall smells. It's interesting because for me, Donkey Kong feels very summer to me. Donkey Kong Country feels very summer to me. And I think that's just because of like the tropical environment.
Totally.
But I get the if for no other reason than you were playing it in the fall.
Well, I mean, also we were talking a little bit on Tuesday's episode about Secret of Evermore.
Yeah.
And one of the things about that game is that it's very like atmospheric, and the music reminded me a lot of the music in Donkey Kong Country, where it is a lot just about like atmosphere, and it's not necessarily like pounding forward movement type music. And that's what people really appreciate about it. And I feel like that kind of also plays into my feeling of like, oh, it's not the excitement of summer necessarily. It's more like the quieter time of autumn.
Yeah, when you're going to really dig into the game and get to that 101%.
And kind of adjacent to that, but related, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze.
Yeah.
A game that I definitely don't associate with playing in autumn, but has a wonderful autumn level called Autumn Hills, which is the second world of the game.
That world is so cool.
Like the music is so good.
Yeah, that's also where the game reveals itself to be like a beautifully designed little like piece of game.
Yeah, more than just like the tropical setting of
Yes.
the like first island in the game.
Then both like the first island in that game and sort of like the entire aesthetic of Donkey Kong Country Returns is like in that jungle theme. And like it's such a weird like departure to have like a fall themed world. And that's kind of what it is. Good picks. So for my first fall pick, we talked about it a little bit on Tuesday. Brain Age. That game feels very back to school to me. And I also remember I bought my DS right at the beginning of the summer, and like I mostly used it at that point to play Mario Kart DS, a great Mario Kart game. And I don't know why it took me a while to get Brain Age, but like I got it in September, like the end of August, and really made it like part of my routine as classes were starting back up again. And this is the year that I was living on campus, but wasn't a student anymore. I was a hall director. So like this was like my dumb little justification to myself was like, I'm not taking classes, I'm not learning anymore, but my brain will not atrophy because this DS game will keep me active and sharp. And just something about having that like routine working on yourself kind of thing feels very back to school, feels very fall to me.
Yeah, totally. And then so kind of the last game that I have lumped in here with the like nostalgia bit of it
Yeah.
is Chrono Trigger.
Oh boy.
And this is another one that like I can't even really remember the first time I played it, like
Mhm.
what season it was. Like it's not specifically that that's when I played it, but especially the opening, the music in that game really kind of has a sense of me that I like associate with autumn, where it's a little bit melancholy. It's really melodic, but is bittersweet.
Yeah. I think there's also something about like the game doesn't expressly take you into different seasons, but like it sort of feels like it does because when you go to like the like far flung future or not the no yeah the super no is it the past, which is the one that where it's like snowy on the ground and then like
Oh,
there's
I
like a flying
can't
continent.
remember.
It's sort of in the past, right? Because that's where like little Magus is. So like that's like kind of wintry, and then when you go to like the prehistoric era, that feels summery, and then the two like eras in like the modern time, there's like the medieval one and then like present day, and those feel very like spring and fall to me. And I you spend a lot of time like in the woods, so you see a lot of trees. That game, yeah, definitely feels like fall.
I also think that there's something very childlike about the game. Like it's very innocent, for lack of a better term,
Mm-hmm.
that makes me like lump it in with all of those other
It
like,
is lump it in
memories.
with all the rest.
Just a big old mess.
So I have another game here that I'm not sure I have a good reason for why it makes me think of the fall. Other than again, I associate it very much with school and school starting up. Battletoads. So this was a game that my buddy Reed Nolan had, and you know he had gotten it over the summer, and like all of us going back to school, and you know in like second grade or third grade or something, passing this game card around and just sort of like challenging each other to like playing this super hard game that like at the time we couldn't get anywhere in that game. Like the speeder bike level, which is level 3, would knock us out. Like I couldn't get anywhere in it so early. And it wasn't until like years later in college that I found an NES, and my buddy Al and I were like, okay, let's get good at Battletoads and like really figure it out. So maybe like that's also part of it too, that I view the game as like a project that like you're starting to take on. And you know, we got as far as you can possibly get in Battletoads with 2 players, which is level 11. At level 11, you can't pass it anymore with 2 players. And so yeah, that game just always makes me think of that time of year and like buckling down to work on like a project.
So the next 2 games I have, these are kind of gimmies.
Sure.
And really they would fit in any like one of these that we did, whether it be for spring, summer. I don't feel like I need to list all of the
Winter.
seasons. But they are Stardew Valley
Yes.
and Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
In any of those games, I don't know, autumn is usually my favorite season in which to play because I feel like the distinction between spring and summer isn't that great, and winter is kind of lame no matter where you're experiencing it.
Yeah, because you can't grow anything, and like things close early, or if they're open at all.
Right. And in Stardew Valley, like, winter, because you can't grow anything, it's normally a time of like where you're going to go explore the mines, or you're going to like really dig into the relationship stuff, or however you do it. But I also just associate like kind of like being outdoors to be more of a autumn thing.
Yeah. So I will just jump in and say that one of mine is the original Harvest Moon on the Super Nintendo, which I think we can lump into this same like category. But I am not, I can't really remember what you could actually do in the original Harvest Moon that wasn't in summer and spring. Like you could take care of your animals, you had to, or they would die. And like that was sort of it. Like there were romance options in the game, but like it was pretty limited. And there were like festivals and stuff. But like the fall, it had like such a nice color palette in fall, that like it was fun to walk around and like see what the town looked like. Which is got to be true of Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should I? So now I've done one already in the form of Harvest Moon. What is your last category?
So mine is spooky games.
Okay, so I think my spooky game, because I have one spooky game on here, and I suspect it is one of your spooky games. Should we try to say it at the same time and
Sure.
see if it is?
Uh-huh.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Resident Evil
4. Oh, okay. I am very specifically for me Resident Evil 4. So I remember playing Resident Evil 2 at my family owned a condo in Hurley, Wisconsin, which is like the very northern border, like bordering on the UP of Michigan. And I remember playing Resident Evil 2 up there one summer. And so like that, in that way, Resident Evil 2 is a very summer game for me. And I guess for that reason, I lump a lot of those games into the summer category. But Resident Evil 4, first of all, it just feels like the beginning of that game is so spooky, and you're like out in the woods.
Right. And it's kind of like, I mean, it's not autumn, but it's kind of a barren,
Yeah.
woods. Like it's not lush or green or anything.
Yeah. So I guess that like that's what does it for me. Because like I guess technically, the original Resident Evil, you're in a mansion in the woods, like in the woods on the mountain or whatever. But it's all inside or like out on balconies and whatever. And then you're gonna go to a lab at some point, which, as discussed, we don't care for. But yeah, that Resident Evil 4 like gives you that like walking around outside, and like those sort of like memories that I have of like exploring the like we had a vacant lot in our backyard that was just like overgrown with trees and stuff, and like exploring that, or exploring like the nearby like prairie land, and just trying to like navigate around and like seeing weird things that like teenagers would leave. Like it all just felt very much the same as Resident Evil 4 to me.
Yeah. So I have two kind of like retro games on here. One that's beloved, Maniac Mansion.
There you go.
So Maniac Mansion is not a scary game as an adult, but it's a very weird game, and weird is the same as
weird.
Yeah, and like weird is the same as scary when you're a kid. You're just like,
That's a
this
good
is
point.
unfamiliar and strange, so like it must be, I'm terrified of it. And that's how I found Maniac Mansion. Like looking back on it, it's full of jokes. Like it's really funny, but at the time, especially since I had never played an adventure game before, had no idea what was going on. It felt so like scary and foreign, and you die all the time in that game if you don't know what you're doing.
Which of course you did not, because you were a child. So that, and then just Resident Evil.
Oh no, sorry.
Yes.
So Resident Evil 4 definitely one for me. But the other kind of like retro game is Clue for the Super Nintendo.
Wow.
Which is a terrible way to play Clue.
Yeah.
Because you have to, like, when you're looking at your cards, you just have to tell everybody to not look at the screen.
Oh yeah.
Because there's no way to do it in privacy. And otherwise it's just totally a game of Clue. Yeah, translated to a board game. Like there's even like, a hand that comes down and picks up the 2 die and then shakes it. And I mean, really, it doesn't really shake it. It just kind of like motions.
Right.
In a
It does
circle.
what a Super Nintendo hand could do.
Right. But I just remember playing that game a ton and having a blast with my sister doing it.
That's so weird. We should do a thing at some point about board games on consoles, because it's such a weird phenomenon.
Total, like, what's the point?
What in
Well,
fact,
especially like like retro
yes,
consoles. Like now, I get it like more. I can understand why you'd want to play Pandemic potentially.
sure.
You know, like
those more involved games, like I can definitely see someone like making a case for. I mean, like if like BattleTech or like just a regular game of like Warhammer or Warhammer 40K, where it is like doing all of the math for you and
right.
like rolling the bunch of dice without you having to do it.
Or like on the go, because I don't know
Sure.
if you ever went on road trips as a kid. Did you get like the travel
Oh
size
my
board
gosh.
games with like all those little pieces?
And they're all magnetic, but you lose them all anyway.
yeah, because the magnets were cheap and not very strong.
No.
But yeah, so like that versus playing Carcassonne on your Switch like makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah.
But what doesn't make any sense is playing Clue plugged
Right.
into a Super Nintendo, plugged into a CRT TV.
No.
When you could just get out the board game.
Makes
But
no
but that's
no
what video
sense.
games does to your brains when you're a kid.
Yeah.
You're like, a real life version of this is stupid, but a video game version of Clue.
That's awesome.
Blueberry Radical.
So then I'm to my last fall game at that point. So my final fall game is Super Mario 64, which came out in the fall. We are just right now celebrating the like 22nd anniversary of the Nintendo 64. Oh,
23rd, right? 1996.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, just over the weekend was the 23rd anniversary, which means it's also the 23rd anniversary of Super Mario 64. And I think I've told this story on the show before, but when I got my Nintendo 64, my dad took me to Target to get it. I'd been saved up all summer, and was in line with a couple other dorks and probably their dads. And we like walked down to the electronics department, and they had two big boxes that they were like unloading. Like they didn't. This was so weird. Like to look back on, like this is the launch of a Nintendo console, and it wasn't like a thing that they were prepared for, right? Like they were still opening the boxes as we were walking up. And so they opened the boxes that had the Nintendo 64s in them, and the guy pulled out the system and pulled out the game, and the game that was in that box was Pilot Wings. And I was like, no, I want Mario, I don't want Pilot Wings. And he was like, that's all that's in here. And 1996, I'm 14 years old. I'm like, well, what about that box over there? I'm telling this dude how to do his job. And sure enough, he opened it up, and then Mario 64 was in there.
Oh, what a relief.
I saved everyone in that line from having to play Pilot Wing 64. And then, got the system home that afternoon and just proceeded to fall in love with it. And Mario 64 is such like a transformative game for like the genre, or just for the medium, but also was just personally very exciting to me. I still like, one of the things that I respond to in video games now is just the ability to make Mario run around a 3D space. Like, I love it. I've turned on Mario Galaxy or Mario Odyssey just to make Mario run and jump with no specific goal, because it feels good and I like doing it. So I know that I did that all the way through the fall of that year. And I remember my buddy Dave like asking if he could borrow the Nintendo 64 from me, and I was like, "No, sir, you cannot. This thing stays here with me." So that's like step one in why I view Mario 64 as a fall game. But then years later, like a decade later, after so I lived in Hawaii for like 2.5 months after college, because I was staying with my sister and her husband. They were in the Army and they were about to be deployed. So she was like, come stay in our house, take care of our dog and all that. So I did that for just a little bit. And when I came back to the mainland, I moved to Chicago with some friends of mine, and it was the very beginning of November. And so I was moving from Hawaii to Chicago, and it was cold in Chicago. And we did not have our heat set up yet in the apartment that we were renting. An apartment which, by the way, would never get warm. We spent over $300 a month on heating that apartment.
Oh my gosh.
From like November through like April. It was impossible to heat. So it was just me and Andrew at this point. Our third roommate, Taylor, hadn't moved in yet. And we had like nothing in this apartment, right? We had like a blow up mattress, my TV, which was like a big, it was a too big TV, a big like LCD TV, and like almost nothing else. So, we would watch movies on this thing, and then we also played Mario 64 on the Wii eShop. And I've mentioned Andrew on the show before. He's the dude that did the 900 Korok seeds in 2 different versions of Breath of the Wild. And so he's an ultra completionist. And, we played through that game and got every, over the course of like a day and a half, staying up all night. Just like really laying that down, being too cold, and just like loving every second of it. So yeah, for me, Mario 64 is those 2 discrete moments in my life. One of being 14 and being so excited and like know-it-all about games, and then like another where like I had just turned my life upside down and was as cold as I've ever been, and just playing it and loving it and getting all the way into it. So that's it for me. Mark, did you have any more fall games to talk about?
No, I think that's a hard one to beat.
That was my goal, was be hard to beat. Now we will, of course, pose it to you, the listener. Do you have any fall games that are better than Super Mario 64? Please write into us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. On that subject, we got an email from a listener about our show from last week, where we drafted characters into our RPG parties from the Nintendo stable. So got an email from Jonathan. Jonathan writes, Mark and Patrick, love the recent RPG draft episode. I thought I would share my lineup. I'm not considering whether these characters appear in an RPG, just anyone appearing in a game on a Nintendo system. Good.
Love it.
In the role of the fighter, Kitty plus mech suit from Gato Roboto. I just think this would be hilarious. Plus, you would always be thinking about upgrading equipment, so I think the Kitty would be a good fit for the fighter. Good pick.
This is not somebody I'm familiar with.
So this is the main character from Gato Roboto, which is just a cartoon cat in a mech. That's it.
Okay, I'm sold. I love it.
For the thief, Goose from Untitled Goose Game. I love this game. Also, Goose is alarmingly good at stealing stuff. So satisfying when Goose runs up to that kid, unties his shoes, picks up the plane, causing the kid to chase after Goose. Kid trips because Goose. The kid trips because his shoelaces are untied. Ta-da! Goose steals the kid's glasses. Can you imagine doing that on an RPG boss?
Amazing.
I cannot. And Mark, that's how you get the kid to wear the wrong glasses.
Well, you can do it that way. There's no wrong answers in Entitled Goose Game.
You are correct. For the black belt, he picked Bowser from just about anything. I know maybe not the first ideal choice, but he is a brawler in games that feature Bowser as a playable character, and he's so satisfying. He cites Super Mario RPG and Mario Odyssey.
And every party needs a heavy.
Yeah, definitely needs a heavy who is a brawler too. And if thinking about when you that's maybe spoilery, talking about him in Odyssey. But in Super Mario RPG, he does fight with his hands. His best weapons are just like slashing and clawing. Now here, Mark, if I do say so myself, this is where it gets good. The Black Mage, Skull Kid plus Majora's Mask.
Ooh, that is a good pick.
Yes, he says for real they would wreck everyone, except maybe Fierce Deity Link, but still that would make a great / terrifying Black Mage.
That's an amazing pick.
He's got all the power in the world. He's going to bring down the moon and smash it with it.
That's hard to beat.
For White Mage, he says any Pokemon trainer, just constantly throwing potions. Great point.
That's great, except Ash, now that he's a champion, he can pay somebody to throw potions for him.
He's got those sweet endorsement deals.
He forgot where he came from.
And finally, for Red Mage, he says Zelda from Breath of the Wild. Once she figures out how to tap into her power, she seems capable of a mix of black and white magic. Think about it. She's able to kill a whole army of guardians, but only has a defensive measure for Link. Probably my favorite memory. And who else could bind Calamity Ganon for 100 years? Great point.
I love this list. This is a really good party.
It's better than mine and better than yours. But if anyone would like to share their parties, again, you can always email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. All right, Mark, let's close this thing out. That is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Remember, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you like the episode, you can share it on Facebook or Twitter. We appreciate that tremendously. On Twitter, I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at NinCart Society. And then the Facebook page is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Eller saying enjoy your pumpkin patching. And thanks for listening.
Hey guys, I'm Stevie Nelson.
And I'm Dave Horowitz.
And we're the hosts of I Burn Everything.
It's a podcast about food and relationships, which, if we're being honest, are 2 out of the 3 things people want to talk about anyway.
What's the third thing?
Netflix.
Okay. We'd like you to rate, review, and subscribe if you like it. Anywhere you listen to your podcast. Apple, iPod,
Stitcher.
Do you still have iPods? If you have an iPod, do it on an iPod. I don't know.
If you have a Zune,
do it on your Zune.
It's probably hard to even charge them now.
Yeah, good luck. And if you have a Tamagotchi, you can't do any of this.
Yeah, you can't stream audio on a Tamagotchi, but you can feed them.
Yeah, you still
so
keep
feed
feeding
those little buggers. They're hungry. Bye.
Bye.
Campfire.